Hey, Carl Rominger here. Good Saturday afternoon. 540-0580. If you have a legal question, legal concern, call in 540-0580. I'm here to answer your legal questions this afternoon. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'm Carl Rominger, attorney at law. Practice here in the Mid-State. I'm going to answer any legal questions you might have. So here's your chance to get some free legal advice, 540-0580. And, of course, if it's something I don't know the answer to, I'll tell you. And if it's something that I think I could find the answer to, I'll have you posted at weekendappointment.com, where people post throughout the week. All you folks who are registered members, be sure and check back every once in a while, see what's new, and make sure you claim your free will if you haven't done so already. 540-0580. Let's see. What did I want to talk about here? Well, first of all, this census thing. I've been on the air with Bob yesterday talking about the census. As I told Bob, I think the census is legal because Congress has the power to enact laws and because they can decide how the census is done. Most importantly, and this is a case I posted on weekendappointment.com. I kind of did an alert. Some of you may have got the email alert on it. The United States Supreme Court recently decided a case and has extended, or I should say extended. They claim not to have extended. They claim just to have pointed out that the necessary and proper clause is available to Congress to legislate outside of things inside of its normally restrained, constitutionally enumerated powers. So in that new case that came out, which was a 7-2 decision, I've been careful to point that out, that it's United States versus Comstock, and it came out on May 17th. This is not an Obama problem. This is not a Democrat-Republican problem. This is a 7 out of the 9 Supreme Court justices say Congress has all these powers under the necessary and proper clause. So, I tell you to write your congressman, call your president, but guess what? That ain't going to work because these guys are on for life. So think long and hard about that, what you want to do. If anything, I don't think there's anything you can do except oppose it and maybe ask Congress to restrain themselves. But under this decision, health care is probably going to be found to be legal. So I want to make sure that I think the writing's on the wall, and that's why I wanted to get it out there. If you go to weekendappointment.com, you'll be able to get, it's right on the front page right now because it's our headline story. It's called U.S. Supreme Court Guts 10th Amendment. That's my editorial, I guess. Makes healthcare mandate likely constitutional. And what do I mean by that? I mean that mandate that you must carry health coverage is probably going to be constitutional. Now, if you have a legal question, I'll come back to this case here in a second. But if you have a legal question, call in 540-0580. 540-0580. We'll get it answered here on the air. But going back to this case that was just decided by the U.S. Supreme Court, they said that the necessary and proper clause, which reads Article 1 of the United States Constitution, Section 8, Clause 18, and I got the exact language here, the Congress shall have power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or office thereof. And at the time that was enacted, it was debated because some people said, you're giving Congress way, way too much power. And the framers said, no, this is surplus language. It doesn't really mean anything. It just means they can do what they can do. So we don't really mean much by it. And that's found in the Federalist Papers. Hamilton talks about the debate at the time and the concerns. And it seems like, the chickens have come home to roost 200 years later. 540-0580 is the talk line number. Call me with your legal questions. Russ, you're on WHP 580.
Yes, sir. I have a question about a support problem.
Sure.
I got a friend of mine that's got 2 children, and one is homeschooled and is graduating this month. Is he still responsible for her insurance until she gets 26 under this new Obama thing?
Currently, under Pennsylvania law, you only have to support a child legally through the age of 18 or emancipation, whichever is later. So, if you have a 19-year-old in school or a 20-year-old in school, you still have a duty of support, which can include health care.
Yeah.
But there's no requirement that a parent carry health care on the child. But is your friend thinking about dropping health care on his kid?
Oh, no. The problem is she's graduating, so she's going to be out of school.
Right.
And I don't know whether she's not interested in getting a job or not, but he's concerned that she just holds on she's 26 years old, he's going to have to pay her health care till she's 26.
Right. Right.
And I'm not so sure that's fair. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think under Pennsylvania law, you don't have any duty to continue to support a child past those points. So I don't think he's going to have to hold her on until she's 26. But that would be up to him whether he wants to do that or not.
Yeah. Okay.
Most people, by the way, are always trying to figure out how to keep their kids on health care coverage as long as possible.
Well, he has no problem with that, but he's afraid that his ex-wife, she works also and has health care insurance, and he's responsible for it, and then at the end of the year, she hands him all these bills and this and the other sort of, for like copay and what.
Yeah, that's over with. He wouldn't have any duty to make the copays. He could keep her on her insurance, but he didn't have any duty to help her out.
Oh, okay. All right. He's not trying to run away from her, but he's just concerned his wife's going to make it a little tough after she graduates if she's not concerned about getting a job.
Understand.
So. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Not a problem.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. 540-0580. Mark, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Carl. Thank you for taking my call.
No problem. My pleasure.
Hey, Carl. Soon we're going to be paying off our mortgage.
Okay.
Now, does the mortgage company need to send me anything? And then whenever my house is paid off, do I need to go down to the courthouse and register anything or do anything with them?
Yes. Your mortgage company should, when you pay off your last payment, provide you with what's called a satisfaction piece. And they'll usually take care of that. It is a document that is filed of record, and then the mortgage is stamped so that we know where to find the satisfaction piece saying that this mortgage has been satisfied and therefore is no longer valid or affects the property. Future buyers are going to want to see a satisfaction piece. Now, the law is very harsh against the mortgagee. Remember, you're the mortgagor and the bank is the mortgagee.
Okay.
The law is very harsh against the mortgagee if they fail to give you that satisfaction piece upon demand. And actually, the penalties allow you to recoup the money you've paid them in an escalating fashion the longer they wait to grant the satisfaction piece and clear that off your record.
So I should get that, say, like 30, 60, 90 days after I make my last payment?
They should do it right after, within a very short period of after your last payment. What you could do if you call the 800 number or the number that's with it and just double check and make sure that they aren't going to require you to jump any hoop. But if they did, there's just a standard request you do, basically asking for the satisfaction piece, and you got to make that request if you want to potentially recoup all your monies you've paid later if they fail to do it, which is why they will do it.
Okay. So far, they've been good on anything that we've asked them.
Yeah.
I can't complain about them.
And banks are very good about this because here's basically, and I don't know the exact time periods, but it's not that long of a time period. If they don't get the satisfaction piece filed, all of a sudden they got to start paying a percentage of all the money you've paid them on the principal.
Cool. I hope that doesn't happen, but that's a nice thing to have against them.
Yeah, and so it creates and the courts have upheld it, saying that what the legislature was seeking to do is say it's very important that these satisfaction pieces get filed as fast as possible. So here you go, world, you're on notice.
For once, it works in our favor.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, if you know now, we do a bonus podcast after the show here where people can keep calling in from 3 until 4, and we take calls. I'm going to have a guy on named Mark Virginis, who's my financial guy. He's my financial expert I like to have on. And he's coming on at the end of the show. But what I want to tell you is you might want to check out the podcast or call in during that second hour and ask him this question. Even though you've paid off your mortgage, the interesting question is, do you still want to have a mortgage because of the tax swing that you can get on one?
Exactly.
So you might want to just run that by him. It might be a good question to ask him.
Yeah, see, we owe such a minor amount anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're not getting any tax swing on it.
No, I'm not.
But
unfortunately, my interest per month is about $20.
So tell you what, do me a favor. If you think about it, call back in at a little after 3, and we'll get you on with Mark, and we'll find out what's going on there.
Okay. Now, the other thing, Carl, if you don't mind, do I have to do anything at the courthouse once I get this satisfaction piece?
No, they should take care of recording that.
Okay. So they should record it down there? Not a problem.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Carl. You have a great week.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye. 540-0580. I will take Jenny and Kevin after the break. Welcome back. Saturday afternoon, Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. 540-0580. And I'm going to take some more calls here in a second, but I wanted to remind folks, because it just went into effect this last week, the new child support adjustments are available. And let me read the new let me read the new thing to you. When the children spend 40% or more of their time during the year with the obligor, that's the person who pays, a rebuttable presumption arises that the obligor is entitled to a reduction in the basic support obligation. The reduction shall be calculated pursuant to a formula, and that's kind of still the same, but it says, except as provided in 2 and 3 below. There's a new thing in there called parenting time, and so the more time you spend with the child, the more potential reduction you could get, assuming that you have expenditures during those time periods. And there's a comment to the rule that basically says people who spend little or no time with their children, maybe an upward deviation is required. People who spend a lot of quality time with their kids, meals, entertainment, things like that, a downward deviation is required. And there's some more overlays. Point is, the support law has changed again substantially for folks who have split custody or who have substantial portions of custody. So get to your lawyer or come see me. I don't really care what you do. But I need you to remember to go see a lawyer because things are changing, and you might want to get those recalculations done. 540-0580. I just want to remind everybody in the bonus podcast hour, and a little bit here at the end of the show, we're going to have Mark Virginis on. He and I are going to talk about all things financial. But if you have financial questions, save them up for the 3 o'clock hour when we're not going to be live on the air, but we're going to be live creating a podcast that'll show up a little after 4 o'clock on the WHP website and on the Weekend Appointment website. And went real well last week. We had lots of callers. If you haven't heard that, just so you know, if you want to still get your questions answered, you can. But I'm going to have Mark Virginis on at that point, and he's a financial guru out of Lancaster. Kevin, you're on WHP 580 with attorney Carl Rominger. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man.
Hey, here's the question. My dad's 86. He's in an assisted living facility. He owns a house.
Okay.
Is there a legal way and, of course, a tax advantageous way for my dad to give my sister that house? And I'm going to hang up and listen on the air because I'm on 81.
Got it. All right, Kevin, you hang up, and I'll give you a second here. So Kevin's hanging up. We're going to answer it on the air here for him. Kevin, what do I want to tell you? If he's already in assisted living, let's assume that he has insurance that's paying for that, or he's paying out of pocket and he can afford to do that, then certainly he can transfer the house to your sister. The next problem is if he's going to go on Medicaid or Medicare, but usually it's Medicaid that kicks in if he exhausts himself, they're going to do a look-back provision, and they're going to ask, hey, what's going on here? Can we get the house, the money, the proceeds? And they look back 5 years. So he's got to be able to continue to pay for 5 years. So the long and short of it is, while there's some things you could do, I don't think there's anything you can do that would protect it from being gotten eventually and wrestled out of your sister's control. And just to give you an idea, people think, oh, I'll make this transfer. Well, they'll sue your sister if in fact, we're within the 5-year look back, because anytime somebody's already in care, especially, is one of the things we look at, which is going to make it a per se fraudulent transaction. Now, again, let me back up. If you guys can afford to pay, and there's no likelihood that he's going to need that asset down the road, then certainly there are various ways he could make that transfer. So, folks, if you're thinking about how to divest your wealth into your children, general rule, don't wait until you're 92 and in a rest home. You got to start planning it in your 50s and your 60s and work up a plan with a lawyer. I just sat down with a couple the other day, and that's what we're working on, is a way to take some of their property now and move it into a charitable situation so that they don't incur estate tax later on it, if possible. Not always possible, but the point is you got to think of these things in the front end. So I guess that hopefully that helps you. I know you're not here to tell me if that's enough and what the details are, but feel free to call back in if you want. Also, of course, like I told you in the second hour, we have Mark Virginis on. He may have some thoughts on that because financial planners are very useful for these types of situations as well. Ginny, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. What's going on?
Hi. Thanks a lot for taking my call.
Oh, no problem.
We have a row of mailboxes along our property.
Okay.
And, neighbors that live back a private lane have their mailbox by our house. And then further up the road, there's another house across the road. He wants to put a mailbox straight across from his house, which would be further up our property, but also on our property.
Okay.
And we're telling him, we have a row of mailboxes, put it with those other mailboxes. And he's saying that he has the right to put it wherever he wants to. And my question is, does he?
Well, he says he has the right to put the mailbox anywhere he wants to. I thought last I knew you had to put the mailbox on your property unless there was some other.
Well, his property is on the wrong side of the road.
Right.
For the mailman.
And I wonder if there's a postal regulation out there. I don't know.
I thought maybe you would know the answer.
I don't know the answer, but here's the real answer. If he's entitled to put it on your property, I would certainly think that it has to be done in a way that would minimize its impact. Yeah. And since you have available a row of mailboxes already, I don't see why he couldn't put it there. Mm-hmm. What we'd have to check out is if there's any postal regulations.
Okay.
And
is there? Do you know? Is there a road right away? He's saying there's a road right away, and that's why he has the right to put it.
Well, that may be particular to your piece of land there. Is it a public road?
It's the road beside our house is a state road.
Okay. So he's saying he's putting in the right-of-way of the road.
He claims that, yeah.
Okay. Well, a right-of-way, though, and what's interesting about right-of-ways is right-of-ways are certainly a right of egress and to go and travel across, and you may own the land under the right-of-way. So, again, a judge could say, you know what, you're right, sir, you're on the right-of-way, but we're going to do it in a way that has the least impact on these folks. So under the equitable principles that a judge can apply to deciding when and where and how a right-of-way can be utilized, judges even have the power to move right-of-ways. Now, what he's saying is there's a public road right-of-way. Mm-hmm. I still think, though, that the way it impacts your land is something that the judge could consider. So I don't think he has the absolute right to put it wherever he wants, absent some legislation or postal regulation that affects that. Okay. So that's what we would have to look at.
Okay.
And I don't know how much you want to fight him. I don't know how much money you want to spend fighting him.
I know, but, right. We don't want to spend a lot of money fighting him, and he probably figures that. But he wants to have it convenient so that he can just walk out of his house across the road and check his mail.
Right.
But then we're responsible for weeding around it and mowing around it, and we have another mailbox on our property when we already have 8 mailboxes. You know what
I would do? I would clear the area out around it and plant poison ivy. Just a suggestion.
Okay. Well, we could.
Well, hey.
We could try that. Thank you very much.
All right, Jenny. Bye. 540-0580. Now, obviously I wouldn't actually plant poison ivy. I would just let it appear magically in the middle of the night. Now, but all seriousness, the postal regulations could certainly affect, and somebody out there who's a mailman or a postmaster or a postal inspector or somebody, if you know the answer, feel free to call in at any point here, 540-0580. And, of course, anyone else with a legal question, call in 540-0580. We're going to be live on the air here for another half hour, and then we're going to continue to take your legal questions after the 3 o'clock hour. And we also have Mark Virginis here. For those of you who don't know Mark, he's a friend of the show, and you can find him on weekendappointment.com under Friend of the Show. I've linked to his website and his contact information. But Mark's the guy you go see when you've got some money and you want to figure out what to do with it to make it work for you in your own particular situation. And, of course, I'm sure when he comes on the air, he'll remind you with this little disclaimer that he can't tell you the answers to questions without a lot of specific information as they might affect you, but he can answer general things and general propositions because everybody's case is different, which is the same with legal cases. When I answer your questions on here, obviously we don't have all the facts or all the information that we might take the time to gather in an office visit, and we also don't have all the facts and information about your own particular situation. So you've got to keep take this legal advice with a grain of salt and remember that it might not actually apply to you because we don't talk about all the different things that surround every issue. So if you hear something on the show and you think you can rely on it and you go ahead and make a legal choice on it and things go horribly wrong, don't come whining to me. Dave, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
How you doing, Carl?
Good, man. What's going on?
Hey, dude, I just want to let you know I stuck up for you a couple times. When you get on Bob and you guys get in this nasty debates,
yeah,
and everybody just goes, that guy you talked to, they're just like, I called in and I got on. I said, hey, Bob, what's up? And I just wanted to let you know that Carl's a nice guy. He's an attorney. That's what he's supposed to do, get off his back,
Well, yeah, I mean, I see my role when I come on the show is to try to explain things, but obviously, I might sometimes take a more extreme viewpoint than I might if we were just sitting.
No, you're just opening up. I understand that. But anyway, I had your back. I just wanted to tell you. But I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you, though.
Did you pass a Amish buggy down there in Lancaster with your minivan?
No.
All right. The last question. I was at a casino. I'm not going to say which one.
Okay.
But did you ever see those old people, how they, like, touch the screens in different areas, like, sweep it? They do all kind of hojo mojo. I don't know, maybe you didn't. But anyway, I tried it, and I started hitting, right? And then it makes a sound when it does it. So then all of a sudden, when I started doing it, it would show the amount play, what you can pay, how many lines times how much, and it stopped paying me.
Huh. Right?
It would just, like, freeze. It would freeze. And you'd start over, and it would freeze. So my buddy was there, and I know I don't know if you're allowed to do it or not, but he had one of those little flip-it camcorder phones.
Right.
Or not a phone, but it's a little camcorder. It's a little thing. I said, dude, just watch this. And so we watched it. Are they allowed to do that?
What they do?
I know they're allowed to mess with their odds.
You think they're
manipulating? I know they were.
Yeah,
because it did it like 7 times. I mean, I sat there. I was playing for a couple hours, but I was doing it, and the one was like $100 hit, and like the machine just froze again, and
then you don't get paid.
Right.
Yeah, and of course the law says the error goes in their favor. I think theoretically that would be illegal for them to do that. So if you could prove it that they were manipulating it, you might be onto something.
But are you allowed to tape inside of there?
Boy,
like,
I don't know.
I know some areas, you're not allowed to,
Well, I'm getting Shane's shaking his head saying, no way, no, how can you do that? Shane's like a professional gambler, so he knows all this stuff.
Oh, okay.
His mom doesn't know that.
How would you prove that case if they're doing it? That's just like... That's
yeah. We'd have to go back, and I mean, it's all electronic records, so theoretically it's all there, but... You know what?
Yeah, well, even in the electronic records, it showed it. The guy could not prove it to me. That's why they opened it up and it has it downloaded, and he showed the screen.
Listen, the gambling board has cleared everybody of any criminal wrongdoing, organized crime ties, everything. So I'm sure it's all above board, my friend.
Yeah.
All right, I got to go to a break.
All right, buddy.
All right,
take it easy.
Thanks for kicking my back. 540-0580. I'll see you after the break. Hey, welcome back. 540-0580 is the talk line number. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Want to remind you that we're going to keep taking phone calls from 3 o'clock till about almost 4 o'clock, where we will be recording them for a bonus podcast, which goes up on Weekend Appointment and WHP 580 website. You won't be able to hear it live on the air here. However, if you tune into 1460 a.m. tomorrow at 7 a.m., they will rebroadcast it there. So if you're up early with absolutely nothing to do, your TV's broken, and you're that bored, go to 1460 a.m. at 7 a.m. I don't think I'll be up at 7 a.m. tomorrow. I don't know yet. Probably will be, but would like to still be in bed. 540-0580. Ron, you're on WHP 580.
Hey, Carl. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's nice to hear you on the air again.
Hey, thanks.
I was curious about something. I talked to Bob. You were on Bob's show. Was it Friday or Thursday?
Yeah.
For a little while. And I had something I wanted to bring up, but I couldn't stay on the line. So what it was is when I heard this news from the administration that because of the Arizona law, they were not going to necessarily process or any illegal immigrants that were rounded up in Arizona and turned over to the, I guess, was it ICE or whatever they're
right.
organization. I was wondering, is there a way that citizens that may be directly harmed by illegals in Arizona could file a lawsuit against the government for failure to basically do their job, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the short answer is we have a cause of action called mandamus, which is when you are asking a political appointee or person to do something they're supposed to do, usually ministerial type function, though. And so if they're supposed to sign something or approve something or appropriate something, you can ask a court to order them to do it and force it if they're refusing. The problem is, and I think what I was kind of talking about yesterday was a lot of this enforcement or non-enforcement is a political decision of the executive branch. And I don't think everybody always just, they expect that the law is this magical, set of words that everybody's just going to follow. And the reality is that we have tons of laws on the books that nobody expects anybody to follow anymore. So I think in some state it's illegal to shove pennies in your ear. And I guarantee you that if somebody got arrested for it, we'd all say, what? But yet it's a law. So the question is, does it have to be enforced? And a lot of times the choice is of the political people or the executive branch. In other words, when the Constitution was put together, the idea was that the legislative branch would legislate, but the executive branch would carry out that legislation. But I'll give you a great example. There's a lot of give and take. So is it, as Bob was calling it, maybe treason for Congress to refuse to fund the president when he wants to close Guantanamo? Now, of course, some people say, well, he shouldn't close Guantanamo. But what's interesting is because the president has no financial power, he can't raise money. And he has no authority to really spend money without congressional approval.
Right.
So, I mean, what's the answer there? So the president wants to do something that he thinks is necessary and proper in his constitutional role, but Congress says you don't have the power to tax, and we can take all the money away from you. And in fact, the Senate doesn't have the power to tax. Only the House of Representatives has the power to tax. So it's even further removed. So if a Senate wanted to do something, the House could say that's great, but we're not going to fund it either. So remember that the whole system's set up as a series of checks and balances, but each person can use their discretion. Now, at some point, right, the Congress can all be elected out. The president can be removed by a majority, vote for impeachment. We've seen that fail a few times where a president hasn't been impeached, and we seem to impeach our presidents for more silly things than material things when you're looking at following the law or not following the law in terms of the national security issues. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, except that I doubt you're going to be able to get a court to second guess, because if you read a lot of the court decisions, like this one I have put up on a Weekend Appointment, United States versus Comstock, it's basically about the broad powers Congress has under the Constitution. And they similarly have found that the executive has very broad powers in recent years. So the courts are disinclined to really interfere with either one, and they put it back to the political remedy.
Well, we're in a unique situation because of the seriousness of what's happening, with the crime rate, the kidnappings, and everything. And I know that the law is what it says. It has its limits, but it seems like that if you had, say, for instance, ranchers who were killed and their family. And let's say Arpaio, the sheriff down there, rounded up the people who committed the crime, and it turns out they were illegal. And then ICE refuses to do anything with them after they're turned over.
Right.
It seems like the families could sue. That would be a strong.
You can't sue the government. It's in the Constitution that you as an individual can't sue a state, and you also can't sue the federal government, except to the extent that they let you sue them, or that you
sue the individual.
Well, and good luck getting any money. But they have immunities as well. But here's in their capacity. But here's the real problem. And of course, I'm gonna bump back you on the Arizona thing for a second. Do you know how the crime rate in Arizona compares to the crime rate in Arizona 25 years ago?
No, that I don't know.
The crime rate is actually down a large percentage, even with everything that's going on right now. 25 years ago, they had a higher violent crime rate than they do, including all the things the illegals are doing, because like a lot of the country, their violent crime rate has been steadily falling. So I think it's important to point something out, which is it wasn't a crisis 25 years ago when a lot more people were getting raped, murdered, and killed in Arizona. Okay. So the interesting question is it really about that? And the answer is, yeah, it makes for great storylines, just like as I was telling a lady the other day, you show a picture of one bird covered in oil and everybody goes, oh my gosh, the whole ecosystem's been destroyed. But the real question is that just one bird covered in oil, or is that 100,000 birds covered in oil, or is that 10 million birds covered in oil? But you only need a picture of one to make everybody think that the whole world's ending.
Well, then we have the other factors to add to the crime rate. The services, the cost to the states and the federal government, and all those things of all this.
Yeah.
Situation.
Here's my question now, and I maintain that this. I don't know. I think there's been economic studies both ways, and that the economic benefit versus the cost of illegal immigrants is like a break-even proposition. Some people say it costs us more. Some people say they make us more. But it seems to me that if you take both sides, and neither one claims to go really a long ways in either direction, it's probably a break-even proposition. But I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows the true economic impact. But I've kind of said this to Bob. I said, remove 1 million people from Pennsylvania tomorrow, or remove 500,000 people from Pennsylvania tomorrow. They all had to eat. So that means every grocery store has to sell that much less food, which means they need less stock boys. The restaurants aren't going to sell as much food, so they don't need as many waiters and waitresses, as many cooks. Anytime you remove people from the population, whether legal or illegal, there's going to be an economic ripple. I don't know what that ripple is going to be. The other thing is, and this is the other crazy thing, think about this. Remove 500,000 people from the state that are, or however many illegals there are in the state, let's say a couple 100,000. You don't need as many. Sure, you don't spend as much on Medicaid anymore, but you also don't need as many doctors and nurses. So you got to lay some of them off.
Well, I understand there's a shortage too. On the other hand,
Right. Well, I understand it depends, and I think that's a interesting point.
Yeah.
So my point is, though, that they're not straight line economic questions.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like tolling.
More complicated than it seems.
And Ron, that's the problem. I mean, maybe that's the problem with life. Everything just gets more complicated the more you think about it, which is why I think a lot of people will just kind of shut their ears sometimes. But think about this tolling on the interstate up on I-80. They were going to pay for, remember they were going to make $800 million and solve all our financial problems?
Right.
but okay, if you decrease traffic by just 15% because of the toll, it's going to come down a little bit. But then you're going to have that much less fuel sales, so that much less liquid fuel tax from the truckers.
Right.
You're going to have that much less sales tax on all the snack items at the Sheets up there in Clearfield. And it just goes downhill from there. And the question is, what is the true economic impact of tolling that road? And so the state goes, we collected $800 million, and in the meantime, lost sales tax revenue, liquid fuel tax revenue. I'd be willing to bet they'd lose $900 million, and they'd still look at you with a straight. And I'm not saying that's what they're actually going to lose, but they'd still look at you with a straight face and go, "This was the best thing in the world."
Yeah.
Because they don't actually ever analyze it as it goes out. And the other thing, I know a politician who said to me that the problem in Harrisburg is you can't think long term. You have to, if you get money, if $800 million came into the state, or $1 billion came into the state, or $100 billion came into the state from the sale of, say, the Turnpike. They wouldn't save it for 20 years. It would be gone. It would be gone the minute they have it. I don't know. I'm going on. I'm sorry to drag you into this, Ron.
That's okay. Hey, I have one more question, and maybe I don't know. I'm kind of curious about something.
Yeah.
Executive powers of a president.
Yes.
What are the limits?
What are the limits?
Can a president do anything? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he has some power. It's congressionally prescribed. Or it's constitutionally prescribed. So I think is it Article 1 that sets up the powers? I'm just trying to remember here.
Can he just keep giving executive orders whenever he feels like it, as often as he wants?
It's Article 2, I think, that gives him his powers. The short answer is, yeah, he can do what he wants to the extent that it violates the law. The Supreme Court can knock it down. But presidential, and we give a lot of deference. Historically, we've let the president do a lot. That may be actionable, but Congress chooses not to take it to the court.
All right.
Ron, I'm going to let you go because I got to go to break here.
Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thank you.
Sure.
540-0580. Jay, I'll talk to you after the break. Hey, welcome back, Carl Rominger. 540-0580, fine Saturday afternoon here. And Mark Virginus is going to be joining us here in the last segment. And then he's going to stay with us and answer, I'm going to answer legal questions. He's going to talk about financial things and maybe answer some financial questions during the bonus podcast. So remember that 540-0580 number is going to stay open. You'll hear a different show on WHB, but if you want to call in and talk for the bonus podcast, you call in and we sit right here and do it. Mark, have I got you?
Yes, you
Okay, this is Mark Virginis. He's my financial guru. And Mark, you want to give your famous disclaimer and get it out of the way?
Sure. Thanks for having me today, Carl, by the way.
Problem.
I'm a registered representative offering securities through Financial Network Investment Corporation, member SIPC. My company, Mirrors Financial Partners, and Financial Network are not affiliated. I'm a registered representative. However, I am a registered investment advisor, but I use the corporate RIA registration through Financial Network Investment Corporation.
All right, Mark. I've been telling the callers to call in with their financial questions, particularly during the second. I got a queue of callers here, so we're going to take some questions. If they're legal, I'll get them. If they're financial, we'll see if you can help us out.
Let's go.
Jay, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger and Mark Virginis. What's going on?
It's legal, Carl.
Okay.
I was actually going to comment on the last call, but I don't know. I want to get down on a political thing. What I do have a question about, and if you can answer it in 50 words or 100 words or less, why does precedent play such an important role in law?
Okay. Well, precedent includes the concept of stare decisis, which means things that have been decided in the past are going to be honored. And the idea of precedent is this, and I think it's important to point out that, for instance, in Europe, a lot of the courts do not have precedent. So you don't know what the result's going to be because the judge might interpret, take the Fourth Amendment, for instance, reasonable search and seizure. Without precedent in case law, each judge is going to make his or her own determination of what the founders meant by reasonable.
Right.
So your problem is you could be in one courtroom with one identical set of facts and another courtroom with another identical set of facts and get two different decisions. And in our system, we don't consider that fair. We want to use precedent as a way to measure what that word means and have the current court compare it to what past courts have done and try to honor it the same way so that you going forward have some assurances.
Well, that's a pretty good explanation. I always wondered. And the only other comment I can make is I'm always constantly, especially when you're on with Bob, and I know he's an entertainer.
Yes.
How little laymen understand about how the law works. I don't mean the details of the law, but the idea that you just can't bring a suit because something's wrong. You have to actually have, an issue. You have to have damages, or you have to have...
I always explain it to folks when they walk in my office and they're very upset about something that's happened to them, and I'm explaining that all these different things, and I say, let me give you an example of a car accident. If I run you over, if all I do is break, cut your nail or break your pinky nail off, it doesn't matter whether I was driving 1,000 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, or 1 mile an hour. The only question is, was I negligent? It's not the speed of the negligence. It's not the atrocity of the negligence. It's the only question of your damages are what are your damages. So no matter how egregious my conduct or close to non-egregious it was, or mildly negligent it was, the only question is, was there negligence and how were you harmed? And so because a lot of people mistake the fact that the guy hit him at 100 miles an hour is somehow relevant. It's only relevant if it damaged you. And it's only relevant if he's claiming there was no negligence, because obviously. But if we all agree there was negligence, it doesn't matter if it's 10 or 100. So that's just one little aspect of a lawsuit. Another's called standing. You can't sue for something that happened to me.
Yeah, right. But it's amazing. I listen, and I know during the week when you're on with Bob, and he's ranting about you should do this, and it's not that simple. And you're just explaining the legal aspects.
Right.
And a lot of people, especially in these hot-button issues like immigration and everything, they're not really thinking, they're reacting, and they just can't understand, why isn't the system doing this for me, and it doesn't work. It's not that simple.
Right.
Anyway, that's my comment.
All right, Jay, thank you very much.
Bye.
All right, Mark, that was legal, so let's try the next guy here. 540-0580. By the way, Carl Rominger here with Mark Virginis. He's got the financial expertise, and we're going to keep taking calls from now until almost 4 o'clock. Ryan, you're on WHP 580.
Hi, Carl. I got it's legal for one and potentially financial for another at the time, but legal.
Your phone's breaking up, dude.
My sister had an accident during that hailstorm here, or she got rear-ended, and I was just curious what kind of liability there would be on her part. I know you don't know the details, but just generally.
Long and short of it is, if there's a hailstorm and she's forced to slow down or brake suddenly, The person behind her had a duty to maintain an assured clear distance as he or she drove. And so theoretically, they should be going only so fast as they could stop based on their visibility and line of sight. So if she was rear-ended, the suggestion usually is the person who rear-ended you is probably negligent. If, however, there's a sudden whiteout and you've got cars behind you and you're driving along and you're trying to figure out how much to slow down, but you don't want to stop dead because you know you're going to cause an accident as well, then the sudden emergency doctrine might protect that person who rear-ended your sister from being negligent, just as she would be protected from being negligent because she had to slow down because she couldn't see where she was going.
Okay. All right. And the second one, is there anything that precludes the government of the Pennsylvania or the national government from changing from like a budgeting-based budget, I guess, to an actual results-based budget for like previous year tax receipts and spending that?
There's no reason why they couldn't do that. The Appropriations Committee and the Congress would have to obviously create that structure, but there's no particular. The Constitution just tells us who can tax and who can spend, but it doesn't really tell us how.
Yeah, I'd rather move to that, to actual results based, and then you divvy up what you got rather than continuously going into debt. But that was it.
All right, Ryan, thanks.
Bye.
All right, Mark, let's see. 540-0580, 540-0580. Folks, keep calling from about now until almost 4 o'clock, and Mark and I will answer your questions. Helen, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger and Mark Virginis.
Hi, Carl. This is a legal question. It's a far-fetched one because Nova had a story of the horseshoe crab, which doesn't sound very important.
Right.
But with the BP oil spill and the oil going up the coast, the horseshoe crab and there's some animal that it feeds seem like nothing. But we get their blood and use it to find bacteria in our drugs that we use in intravenous.
That's correct. I'm familiar with that. It's
and this is like I'm like so shocked. I'm thinking, and they have this little.
Here comes the music. You want to hang with us?
But you can comment on it. As can we get damages? Can the U.S. sue them for the damage?
Yeah, absolutely. It would be an environmental damage. I don't know about the rest. 540, Helena. 540-0580. Helen, I'll let you go. Call back if you want. 540-0580. We're going to keep taking calls now. Mark Virginis and I will be on the bonus podcast here for about the next hour. So call in, folks, 540-0580. And if you're already on the line, hold, and we'll put you on in the podcast.